Welcome to Legal Action. Today we're going to discuss the very timely topic of mortgage foreclosures. I'm your host, Susan Alvarado, and we have with us today three of DuPage County's most prominent legal experts to help us navigate the process of mortgage foreclosure. I'd like to start by introducing Stephen Bashaw. Steve represents people who find themselves in trouble over their head, who find themselves perhaps threatened with the possibility of foreclosure. Steve, welcome. Thanks for being here today. Let's face it, Steve, we're all living in an economy right now that is declining. Lots and lots of people are finding themselves in a difficult financial position. Steve, can you take us through the process? Let's say I'm a homeowner and I've missed a few mortgage payments. I'm worried. I contact you. I've been getting notices from my lender. What would you say to me, Steve?
You know, I'd pick up, Susan, on the first thing that you said, which I think is really important. People lots of times get into denial about foreclosure, because who wants to face that? And it's really important to realize, as you said, there are people going into foreclosure today that are better people than you and I, and it's not something you should be in denial about. You need to understand that foreclosure is a process. It's a step-by-step process. In Illinois has one of the most liberal foreclosure time periods of all of the states.
Well, that's good to know.
It is.
So what happens, let's say I'm receiving notices, I've missed a couple of mortgage payments. What would be your advice, Steve, as to the first step that I might take?
Well, before you get a summons, before there's a case pending, it's important, and I know my friend Pat will talk about this, it's important to talk to your lender. That's the most important thing. The next thing is not to panic. Okay, in Illinois, it takes at least 7 months from the day somebody is served with a summons for a foreclosure to wind all the way through. And it generally gets to be almost a year. And it's an orderly process. You receive a summons, you have to read that summons. That summons says you need to file an appearance within 30 days or you'll be in default. The complaint will be confessed against you.
Well, Steve, if I could just interrupt you for a moment, is there a specific period of time? How long a period of time do I have between missing my first mortgage payment and being served with a summons?
Generally speaking, it's at least 90 days. Now, there are some circumstances where the lenders are very insecure or the property isn't worth what's owed. They may move a little quicker. But Pat can tell you about that. His clients, most lenders don't go and file a foreclosure complaint until you're at least 90 days behind, and then it takes 30 days or thereabouts to serve you with a summons. And what's important is that the day you're served with a summons begins the running of this period. And if we're talking about residential owner-occupied property, the minimum time is 7 months from the date the court serves you, the sheriff serves you with a summons. Or an even longer day, which is 90 days from the date of the entry of judgment. That's when the redemption period expires. And then there's a sale after that. And then there's a confirmation. And there's a 30-day stay before you can be evicted. So, Susan, many times people come into my office and they're distraught because they think they're going to be evicted from their home tomorrow.
Right.
And you don't like to have people put things off and then forget about them. But at the same time, you know, you can take a breath, gather your wits about you, and communicate with your lender.
Right. And so then if I were to come into your office, Steve, and you were to give me this advice, would you say then the most important piece of advice you could give to a homeowner, at least at the beginning of this process, is to contact their lender and to communicate directly with the lender to see what can be worked out? Sure.
And you know what? You need to step into the lender's shoes for a minute. And here's what you need to know before you make that phone call. The lender is going to want to know, why did you go into default? Was it beyond your control? Has that problem remediated itself? And what can you do now? And I know that seems so simple, but the truth of the matter is a lot of people just don't want to confront that, you know, because of the stigma of what's going on. But that's the first step, is to know, why did I go into default? Was it beyond my control? Have I remediated it? And what can I do today? That's really what the lender wants to know, and that's what you need to know to go through this process in a fashion that can be amazingly beneficial, really.
Well, that's good. It certainly sounds a lot less threatening and a lot less worrisome than what a lot of people, I think, envision as being a foreclosure event. I know lots of clients perhaps do think that this is an imminent event, that if they receive a notice that they're going to be ousted from their house immediately, and you're saying that's not at all the case. Right?
Our laws were designed back in the 1800s when we were an agrarian economy, and when people went into default, it was because they had a bad crop year. And our law is designed to give them another crop year.
Oh.
So it takes a year, even though we're not all, growing corn anymore, but it takes that much time. So you have to balance, though, right? No, you don't have to be panicky. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but tomorrow will come much quicker than you think.
Right. But we are in an economy, aren't we, where people are losing jobs every day and things are changing. So I'd like to take a moment now to introduce your colleague, another fine attorney from DuPage County, Pat Williams. Pat represents generally the lenders. Is that right, Pat?
That's correct.
Could you pick up a little bit, Pat, on what Steve's been explaining to us? What is the next step in the process now? We've contacted our lender. We've explained that the problem was perhaps out of our control. What is it the lender would like to see?
Well, I would like to underscore a point with the lender's position. In most instances today, there are affirmative duties on the part of the lender to go out and to solicit the borrower who is having financial problems and to try and make contact. Now, it's in the form of a collector, and it may be in the form of phone calls. And those phone calls tend to be not the only phone calls that the borrower is receiving. So they tend to be ignored. And one of the things that Steve, I think one of his first points was to address it. And I really need to underscore that because I do believe that lenders do try and make the effort. I also believe that the foreclosure is a process that is very difficult to consider by a borrower who is confronted with this situation. My experience is that borrowers who are facing foreclosure are facing a catastrophic financial problem. The house is the last to go, in my experience, and they want to do everything they can to keep the roof over the head. And so I believe that it is an incredibly stressful time. But now, having said that, I'm hired by the bank. Once the process of working with the loan customer has broken down, and they've turned the file over to me to initiate the foreclosure process. And if I would make an observation at that point, I would suggest that when there are these communications with the lender that are initiated by the borrower, that those communications be in writing. I will be in court countless times, and there will be some person standing before the judge saying that I tried to contact so-and-so 100 times, and they would never return my phone calls.
Well, it sounds to me that communication, it sounds trite, but it sounds to me like communication really is the key here. Am I right?
I would say that, yes.
Yes.
And I would then, though, say meaningful communication.
Meaningful.
And by that I mean many times the situation that confronts a borrower and the requirements of the bank are not synchronized.
Well, I'd like to take that a little bit farther in 1 minute. We have to take a quick break here. Please stay with us. Legal Action will be back in just a moment. Thank you.